Hi, this public service announcement is brought to you by herpes. Unfortunately, I carry them, so I know a lot about these little silly things. There are two different categories for herpes. We are going to focus on number one, which is actually the oral herpes. So, commonly known as cold sores or fever blisters. You'll see these around the mouth, if not right directly on the lips. Most common for that. They are part of the alpha herpesvirus group. There's a lot of fun statistics, but I'm going to share a little bit about my personal experience with them. I grew up having them from whenever I can remember. My first grade picture, I think actually all my school pictures, I always had one in the side, sometimes one here in the front. And it was just brought on by stress. My grandmother had them, and we later found out around in my 30s what it really was. So when I was diagnosed with herpes, I felt really dirty and disgusting because we always associate that word with an STD. Yet I had done nothing to bring these upon myself. So I learned through a doctor who had seen me when I was sunburned on one side of my face. I had a bunch up across my nose and down, and then just tons in this area from the sunburn. So the sun stressed out my skin and brought that virus to the top, and he stopped me and was just asking me about them, and I was like, oh, they're just fever blisters or cold sores. Or, I didn't even know cold sores and fever blisters were different, or the same thing. I thought they were different because they looked a little bit different. These ones were a little bit more balled up, full of fluids. These ones were a little bit more scabby over. They looked different. I just thought I had a really bad sunburn. He was the first to educate me on that. They are not hereditary like we thought. Out of the 21 grandkids, over 80% of us have them, and I have an aunt and an uncle that also have them. So we just thought they were something in our DNA. No, my grandmother kissed us when we were little, and she shared that with us. So it is a virus. It's incurable. I will have it for the rest of my life, but there are ways for me to manage it. So when it came to testing and knowing what they were, there are things you can do, like a culture and a nucleic acid test, but most times the doctors will just look at them and diagnose them at that spot. They'll ask you if somebody else has them, if you've come in contact with them, and usually the sores kind of look the same, even in their different stages of healing. So first you get a little tingling or a little itching. You know that something's going on there about 12 to 24 hours before the blister appears. And then the blister appears. It is clear fluid, but it is a little tiny blister. And sometimes it can be one giant one. It can be a cluster of little ones. And then over time, the sores dry out and they scab over. And that scab takes a little bit longer to heal depending on just your own healing immune system. There's, like I said, they're incurable, but there are ways to manage them. You can take prescription medication daily or just as with an outbreak. It's an antiviral. There are some over-the-counter creams that can help speed up that kind of the drying process of the blister. That can help with them. They tend to be a little bit more expensive, and if you can't really catch it, like $15-20, and if you can't catch it within basically that first 24 hours before the blister really appears, they're kind of not worth the money, because it only maybe speeds it up a day or two, and you've just spent $20 to do that. So the mode of transportation is skin to skin, so coming into contact with somebody that has that sore. Also simple things like a handshake. So again, you're skin to skin at that point, you're shaking hands, and then you go to touch your eyes or something like that. So there are a lot of complications you need to be aware of, such as that contact. A lot of times, as I had happen one time, I had a toddler cousin bump one, and the ooze, the clear fluid on the inside dripped down, and I ended up waking up the next day with the tingling, and then the next day after I had a whole bunch more that had spread. As well as if you happen to get any of that and haven't washed your hand frequently and you scratch your eye, you can actually end up with ulcers and other things in your eye, and it actually can cause blindness. So these are a pretty serious thing. They're a lot more than just an eyesore and a painful little blister. They actually can be transferred down to different areas of your body, including your genital tract. So one can cause number two, for the different categories there. And so really prevention is washing your hands frequently. There's nothing that really just can't solve. And then obviously some abstinence. So avoiding anybody or the areas with that contact that already has the blisters. Avoid sharing any things like lip balms, your fork, a straw, My children are very cautious to ask me if I'm clean. That's their way of asking, do I feel tingly or something like that when they're going to go share a drink with me. So there are a lot of ways. So far, I have not spread them to anybody, and I'm thinking that's awesome. The greatest risk group really is just anybody. Anybody can come in contact with them when we're talking about the herpes virus simplex number 1. So I highly encourage you to just wash your hands frequently.